Welcome back to Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small.
And I'm Paul Ogden.
This is November 3rd, 2012. The general elections are in just a few days.
And there's a football game today, too, Mark.
DePauw University is playing our arch rival, the miscreant, evil Little Giants of a school up in Crawfordsville, Indiana.
What exactly is a little giant, Mark? It's a regular-sized person?
No, they're kind of pricks, but that's beside the point. I'm sorry, this is civil discourse, but yeah, not towards Wabash alums. I apologize.
Not anymore, it is.
Our guest is Judge Jim Gray. I apologize for that outburst. He's a Libertarian Party candidate for Vice President of the United States, running with Governor Gary Johnson, who's running for President of the United States. You were on a roll right before we got to the end of that last segment.
Look, when I talk with people, I challenge them. I challenge our viewers. You name me an area of our society, and I will show you how the war on drugs, drug prohibition, is making it worse. Anything you want to think about.
I agree.
You know, it's just absolutely out of control.
And I was going to ask about civil forfeitures.
Oh, good heavens.
Concern of mine, because there's so much of it going on now. They don't limit it to drugs now. They'll pull you over for some alleged violation, take your vehicle.
It turns our system of justice on its head. It makes the person who loses the property have the burden of showing that this property was not involved with or purchased with drug money, involved in drug transactions. And it simply puts the burden where it should not be. And the grim joke of all of this is that, police officers go out and they seize some property. And in California, the first line of defense is, if you feel it was done incorrectly, you can go to the district attorney and say, wait a minute, give me my property back. But the district attorney gets 10% of the property. So a little conflict of interest there. Yeah. And then, the true grim joke is that the police chief will then come to the city manager for his budget. And the city manager will look at him frequently and say, well, chief, you had a really good year last year. You seized $300,000. Now, I know you can do better next year. So we're going to reduce your budget by $350,000 because we know that you're going to have a better harvest this coming year. It simply puts incentives upon, let's call it what it is, corruption. Institutional corruption simply has to be repealed. I don't have any problem with asset forfeiture, honestly, if after you're convicted before a jury, then they say, okay, same jury, you've heard the evidence, we'll present a little bit more. Was this airplane that he was using used to transport drugs? Was this gold jewelry purchased with drug money? And if so, submit that to the jury and have them say yes. And if it is, then you put it in the general fund, but it does not go to any particular institution.
And something proven beyond a reasonable doubt to have been either an intrinsic part of the trafficking or intrinsic product.
Yes, or at least by clear and convincing evidence by that point. But yes, and that's fine. I'm good with that. But today, it's simply institutionalized corruption, and it's just another, structuring laws. It is now a violation of federal law for me to buy your automobile or anything by using $10,000 in cash or more. It doesn't have to have anything to do with drugs whatsoever. It's a federal offense. You can't do it.
I was not aware of that.
Don't do it because, and it doesn't have to be drug related whatsoever. So it's just another result of this failed war on drugs.
Let me ask you about an area where I sometimes differ with libertarians. Privatization. I used to be a big fan of privatization in the 90s, but 20 years later, I'm looking at how it worked out in practice. I see a lot of corruption. I see a lot of.
In what type of area?
Well, I'm talking about
an example here in Indianapolis. They sold or they leased the parking meters for 50 years to
which isn't competition. Privatization has to be about market competition.
Well, look, they gave away the store. I mean, why they did that, I don't know. You talk about Indianapolis. I was treated to seeing your two stadiums here for the Colts and for the Pacers, which are just an abrogation of public monies, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we can't afford tickets to get in.
Yeah, so. Why should any public entity own any sports stadium. I mean, we have the Los Angeles Coliseum where we're seeing all of this basic fraud and ineptness in the Los Angeles Coliseum. They were so good they chased out the UCLA football team and the Los Angeles Rams. And
yeah, but the Los Angeles team in the NFL is doing really well this year, though.
Well, it's better than a lot of others because there isn't one. But, you know, it's just simply wrong for public entities to own sports stadiums.
Well, we own them, but we pretty much have given them away, though.
That's what I understand.
In our defense, yeah.
Okay.
Not in our defense, I'm being sarcastic.
We've got to realize what is appropriate for government and what is not. And yes, competition's a good thing, but you don't put caps on the amount of money that the state can receive. You know, that's simply a gift of public funds. You just don't do that.
One thing I've seen in privatization is the long-term contracts. Looking back on the reinventing government, the Bible, so-called, of privatization, they didn't even mention these 50-year contracts where the current administration gets a bunch of money up front and depriving future generations of that revenue stream.
And they guarantee that there's no risk?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you just don't do that. You just don't do that. Private enterprise includes taking a risk, and it's taking your gambles.
One big area of concern, well, for everybody, but I have multiple sclerosis, and my wife is a breast cancer survivor. Our health insurance was about $1,000 a month each. Then I started shopping the day after the Affordable Care Act was affirmed by the United States Supreme Court, and suddenly the available insurance policies dropped out of sight. What is your party's position on health care?
Okay, I cannot answer that question because I don't speak for the Libertarian Party. I've never found anyone that speaks for the Democratic or Republican parties.
Then, as a candidate, what's your position?
That I can do.
That was the appropriate
You know
way.
something? I would revolutionize this thing. When I was growing up, and I'm pretty much older than both of you guys, in the 50s, middle 60s, it wasn't even a topic of conversation that we cannot find reasonable health care for reasonable prices. Not even on the radar. We weren't closing emergency rooms. We had all we needed. And then the government starts getting into it with Medicare in the Lyndon Johnson time and everything, giving away a whole bunch of free stuff to a select group of people, namely 65 years of age or older. And of course, you know, I believe in older people and care and the rest, but it really messes up the system. Today, if you want the Department of Motor Vehicles to run your health care, we're well on our way. That's exactly where we're going. What we would do, what I would do, and I believe Governor Johnson as well, is divide our country into three groups. The first group is pretty much everybody here, that we can take care of ourselves. So get the government out of the way and let us do that. That means today, for example, if you go to a doctor and you say, "Doc, I have a knee problem," and the doctor will say, "Oh, you should have," see, I aimed at the right person. "You want an MRI?" And the answer is, "Sure, why not?" Why? Because you're on Medicare or you've got your own private insurance and you pay a whole bunch of money for that. So why not get the best all the time? If it's Medicare, maybe it'll cost me $20 in a copay, and if it's my medical insurance, maybe it'll cost me $40 or $50. Now, if instead you ask the doctor, "I don't know, Doc, what will it show me and how much it will cost?" The doctor doesn't even know today how much it will cost. Cost is not a factor. You have a third party paying, which therefore, of course, you don't care, and the prices go up. That's what we've gotten into. If you would spend your own money on having a medical savings account in some fashion where you yourself put, for example, $4,000 into an ATM account every year, or your employer does if that's what happens. You have an ATM card, you control that, and then you have catastrophic coverage, basically a $4,000 deductible insurance policy. Then you will safeguard your own money, just like you do your shoes or your glasses or anything else. You're price sensitive, you'll get value for your money. So we'll be able to take care of ourselves. By the way, the average is each adult in the country spends about $2,500 a year on health care except their last 6 months of life when it goes higher. So if it's a $4,000 amount, you only spend $2,500. The extra $1,500 will roll over into your account next year, eventually roll over into an IRA for your retirement. So you always have that vested interest. That will take care of these people. Prices will come down. Competition will continue. The doctors, for example, if you do say, "I want an MRI," they'll say, "Well, it costs $600, whatever it is." You give them your ATM card. They swipe it. The money goes into their account. They don't bill anybody. You don't have all this administration, bureaucracy, and fraud, which we're majoring in today's world. Certainly Medicare does that. So that takes care of the a large group of people. The second group of people are those that cannot take care of themselves. And look, I was in the Peace Corps. I care about people, and we will have a safety net. The answer is the government will be the last resort instead of the first resort. But for those people that literally cannot take care of themselves, mentally ill, whatever, we will have a system of government-sponsored medical facilities. So we will actually spend money on doctors, medicines, and nurses instead of administration, bureaucracy, and fraud. So then, yes, they'll have a $10 copay. That'll keep people out, kind of self-screening that they're just because they're lonely or something. But otherwise, and if you can't afford that, they'll do that too. It's called socialistic medicine, if you want. I lived in a socialistic medicine institution for 4 years called the United States Navy, and it really worked pretty well. My son was born at the U.S. Naval Hospital in Guam. You know, it works pretty well. And then you have the third group, and that is the people in between, the ones that can't quite afford to take care of themselves. So if they need to, they can go to the government clinic, pay a higher copay. Get rid of Medicare. You know, it's not a contract. It's just something that we want to make sure that we take care of our people. Our system will, and you get away from all of this administration costs and all of this fraud and all of this paperwork and everything, and just spend your money on doctors and nurses and medicines.
Today, a big chunk of our budget is spent on the Pentagon and on military operations of our government.
Yes.
We certainly have responsibility to protect our shores, protect our people.
Truly.
That was in the early days of our country, one of the reasons that the federal government came into being. What would be your position in terms of our military overseas, our budget for the Pentagon,
Please.
et cetera?
Yes. First of all, I am the only one running for president or vice president that's actually served in the military. And I think that gives me a perspective. I was Navy JAG for 4 years. No one else, to my knowledge, was in the military.
I hadn't thought about that.
You know, it gives a perspective. And I've been in a place in which we were put into harm's way in Vietnam where we were not prepared and not equipped. That is not going to happen under the Johnson-Gray administration. Secondly, we believe in a strong military for our security. And anybody that attacks us or our allies will truly wish they had not. Otherwise, we're going to declare peace. We're not going to have our troops fighting in all of these conflicts around the world unless it's a security threat to the United States. I'll ask you, do you believe Somalia is a security threat to the United States of America?
I personally don't, but I think some people in the room might.
Well, maybe some people might. If you're talking about Al-Qaeda, for example, because there's always been some bad people in the world. These are radical folks trying to do bad things to good people. I understand that. But honestly, if you look at it, Turkey has much more reason to be concerned about them than we do. Certainly Saudi Arabia, Russia, etc. We're not the world's policemen. We can't afford it. Again, we're overextending from our financial standpoint. The biggest security threat to the United States of America is a failing economy. So we cannot continue to overextend. Just like ancient Rome was never conquered from without, they overextended, collapsed from within. So we are going to bring our troops out of those conflicts. Yemen, Sudan, certainly Afghanistan. The answer is we bring our troops out now. Then, additional subject. Today, we have somewhere between 900 and 1,000 military bases in foreign countries. Again, if they're necessary for our security, terrific. Keep them there, reinforce them if they're necessary. But I would say, without even scratching our heads more than once, we can close 80% of those and still be fully secure.
But we need Guantanamo Bay because it's a coaling station, and also because it's close.
Do that to me.
It's close to really good cigars. And it's
Yes.
another vice that I.
You know, if you need Guantanamo Bay for our security, I certainly believe probably Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, and you know, fine. Although they don't have good cigars in Diego Garcia, we'll have to have a compromise somewhere. But, you know, we'll look at these things. There was a woman I read in a magazine saying that she lives in Germany in a small town near a U.S. Army base. And she was horrified at the thought that they might close that base because they would lose 92% of their revenue, to which I say, good, let's spend it back here in Indiana or in Louisiana or New Jersey instead of all the way around the world. So we're going to have a strong military. Then you look at Obama and Romney, who are basically competing with each other to see who can bomb Iran first, who can go to war with Iran first. We say, we're not going to bomb Iran unless Iran attacks us or our allies. End of discussion. We will continue with diplomacy with regard to their nuclear desires and certainly with the sanctions, but we're not going to attack anybody that does not attack us.
Do you have another stop after here, or do we have time for another segment? Okay,
Sure.
We're going to be right back with our third segment with Judge Jim Gray.
We just got started.